A disappearance is a strange thing. The thought of someone or something just vanishing and never being seen again is hard to comprehend, and unfortunately it's fairly common. Hundreds of thousands of people are reported missing each year, and although thankfully most of them are found, some are not. Out of the few that are not, there is a small number of disappearances that just do not add up and leave many unanswered questions. So from a strange 911 call moments before a man disappears, to a member of one of the most powerful families in the world vanishing, here are 5 very mysterious disappearances that I know will get you thinking. Jimmy Hoffa. James Hoffa, known as Jimmy Hoffa, was born in Indiana on Valentine's Day 1913. After his father's death in 1920, the Hoffa family moved to Detroit, and at age 18, James married Josephine and they had 2 children together. As a young man, Jimmy was an active union member, and his bravery and never back down attitude earned him a leadership position in the organisation. By 1932, Hoffa was invited to join the local 299 of the Teamsters in Detroit, a union for truck drivers and warehousemen. Over the years, and with Hoffa's influence, the Teamsters became one of the most powerful workers' unions in the United States. However, for him to achieve this, he had to accommodate and make deals with many of the gangsters who had long been in control of the truckers' union. Despite this, by 1946, Jimmy became the president of the local 299, and in 1958 was president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Throughout his presidency, he maintained links to organised crime, and in 1967 he was convicted and imprisoned for attempted bribery and fraud. His 13-year sentence was pardoned by President Nixon on the condition he resigned all union activities in return for early release. Jimmy was released from prison in 1971 and attempted to regain his position, but 4 years later, at age 62, he would be involved in one of the most mysterious high-figure disappearances in United States history. On August the 18th, 1975, Jimmy arrived at the Red Fox restaurant in Detroit at around 2 p.m. and called his wife from a payphone to say that the 3 men he was meeting with had not turned up, but that he was going to wait for a few more minutes. This was the last time he would speak to her because shortly after, he was seen by a truck driver getting into a car with 3 other men. The truck driver said he saw Jimmy in the back seat and spotted a long object covered with a blanket on the seat next to him, and this was the last time Jimmy was seen. It's unsure who the 3 men he was meeting with were, but it's thought it was a Detroit Labour leader, a local mobster, and a well-known figure in Teamster politics. What happened next has sparked many rumours and stories. Some say he was taken to New Jersey where his remains were mixed with the concrete that was used to build the New York Giants football stadium. Others say he was encased in a concrete block used for the foundations of the helipad at the Sheraton Savannah Hotel, which at the time of his disappearance was owned by the Teamsters. Other explanations include being crushed in a scrap compactor, ground up in a meat processing factory, dissolved in a fat rendering plant, or killed by federal agents. But the most believed outcome for Hoffa came from a prisoner who said a mobster known as Tony Pro and a few other gang members killed Jimmy and buried his body in a massive steel drum at a toxic waste site in New Jersey. Despite the tip-off, no arrests have ever been made. Whatever happened to Jimmy Hoffa is unknown, but it seems safe to say that he is no longer alive and was officially declared dead in 1982, although the investigation is still ongoing and his family are still pushing the authority to find out what happened and who is responsible. Michael Rockefeller. We have all heard of the Rockefeller family, one of the richest and most powerful families in the world, but you may not know that one family member disappeared and is thought to have been eaten by a tribe. Michael Rockefeller was born on the 18th of May 1938 and was the 5th child of American Vice President Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller. Michael attended school in New York before completing a university course at Harvard, and after a brief career in the US Army, he joined an exhibition to study the Dani tribe in New Guinea to film a documentary called Dead Birds. It was whilst on this trip that he became interested in the Asmat tribe. Michael became so fascinated with the tribe that he returned to the area to study them and collect artwork. This time, on November the 17th, 1961, he travelled with Dutch anthropologist René Swanson, and they were accompanied by 2 local men. The 4 were travelling in a 40-foot dugout canoe, but found themselves stranded and adrift when the boat overturned. The 2 guides swam to get help, but when they did not return, Rockefeller decided to try and swim the 12-mile distance to shore himself, telling René he was confident he could make it. This was the last time René seen him. René was rescued the next day, but despite an extensive search, Rockefeller's body was never found. He was declared officially dead in 1964, 3 years after his disappearance. However, the years that followed speculated that something very different had happened and that Michael had not drowned. Journalist Carl Hoffman said that during visits to the area, he heard many stories that Rockefeller almost managed to make it to the shoreline, but was met by around 50 native men who initially thought he was a crocodile. When they realised it was Mike, a man who had visited their village on previous expeditions, the tribesmen quickly surrounded and killed him. He was then pulled onto the canoe and after reaching the shoreline, dragged through the mud and beheaded. His body was then butchered and his head was cooked. Once cooked, his brain was made into a separate dish mixed with leaves and sago, and the remains of his skull were wrapped in banana leaves and taken back to their village as a trophy. In Hoffman's book, Savage Harvest, the way the Asmat tribe live is explained, and also an American artist spoke to the tribe, and they described finding and eating Michael, although the Rockefeller family have never accepted this explanation and believe that he drowned. Another theory is that Michael decided to live with the tribe. This came about when a photograph emerged that was allegedly taken in 1969, 8 years after Rockefeller's disappearance. It shows a white tribesman paddling a canoe with naked Asmat warriors, and it's thought that it could be Michael. It's definitely a nicer explanation than being eaten by cannibals, but there is still no solid proof of what happened to him. Claudia Lawrence. The disappearance of Claudia Lawrence is one of the most mysterious ongoing disappearances the UK has ever seen. It started on the afternoon of March the 18th, 2009, when University of York chef Claudia Lawrence finished her shift and returned home. That evening, she spoke to her parents on the phone and made arrangements for Mother's Day, and also sent a few text messages to friends before disappearing without a trace. Claudia was reported missing the next day when she failed to turn up for work, and police searched her house but found nothing unusual. In the weeks and months following her disappearance, it seemed that Claudia had several alleged relationships with a variety of men. Although this seemed harmless, it's thought that the men she was involved with, some of which lived in Cyprus, could be responsible for her disappearance. Not long after, some CCTV footage was released that shows a man walking near the back of Claudia's home on the day she disappeared. The person goes out of view, then reappears a few minutes later, with what police believe is something over their shoulder. They then stop when someone walks past and then carry on walking. It's eerie knowing that this person could have something to do with Claudia's disappearance. In 2013, the UK's Major Crime Unit reassessed the case, and it was discovered that her mobile phone had been internationally turned off at around midday the day after she disappeared. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of murder, but all charges were dropped with a lack of cooperation from witnesses and a lack of evidence. So where is Claudia? After 7 years, she is officially presumed dead, but her family refuse to believe this and strongly believe someone knows something and hope that the mystery will be solved. The case continues to receive a lot of publicity in the UK, and despite 1,200 people coming forward to offer information, Claudia is still missing and there is no hard evidence to suggest what exactly happened to her or where she is. Brandon Swanson. On May 13, 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson and his friends were celebrating the last day of classes at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. Shortly after midnight, Brandon phoned his parents and asked them to pick him up, as he said he had driven his green Chevy into a ditch in the nearby town of Lind, just 10 minutes from his home in Marshall. Brandon's parents set out to rescue their son with him still on the phone to them. When they reached the location their son had described, there was no sign of him or his car, and they could hear him through the phone switching his lights on and off to try and help them locate him. They were also flashing their lights, but neither could see each other. Still on the phone, they were getting frustrated and eventually Brandon hung up. A few moments later, his mother called him back and Brandon said he was walking to a friend's house. After dropping Brandon's mother home, his father headed back out as Brandon directed his father to a nightclub car park in Lind. Then all of a sudden, Brandon cursed and the phone went dead. This was the last time anybody heard from him. In desperation, his parents continued to call his phone and also called on his friend's help to try and locate their son, but no one could find him. The following day, Brandon was reported missing, but police were not overly concerned, stating it was not uncommon for 19-year-olds to stay out all night. When Brandon failed to return home, further investigations showed that he was nowhere near Lind when he called his parents. In fact, his phone records show he was over 20 miles away in Minnesota. Police found his car in a ditch near Porter, over 25 miles from Lind, and there was no indication of foul play. They searched the surrounding woodland and the nearby Yellow Medicine River, and police and his family are convinced that he did not drown. Despite sniffer dogs searching for over 3 weeks, no trace or evidence has ever been found. So what happened to Brandon? Theories range from him being kidnapped, attacked by an animal, run over and hidden, abducted by aliens, or that he wandered off and died of hypothermia. But there is one problem with all of these theories: none of them would account for him swearing, and then hanging up whilst on the phone to his dad. If he was in danger, he would have most likely stayed on the phone. Also, the phone was still working when his father called back, it's just that no one was answering it. How did he completely disappear whilst on the phone, leaving no trace to where he was? What's your theories? Brandon Lawson. The disappearance of Brandon Lawson is one of those cases, much like the Elisa Lam case, that genuinely got me totally confused and pretty scared. What's eerie about this disappearance is the build up to it and the 2 mysterious phone calls he made just moments before vanishing. At the time of his disappearance, Brandon was 26 years old and a father of 4 who lived in San Angelo, Texas. On August the 8th, 2013, he had a small argument with his long-term partner and left the house at around 12 p.m. He was driving along a remote stretch of highway between San Angelo and Abilene when he ran out of gas. He called his brother Kyle at 38 minutes past 12 to come and rescue him, and after this, something happened and Brandon made an emergency call to 911. Now, I've always said I would never do a 911 phone calls video as I think they are disrespectful, but in hopes of spreading awareness of Brandon's disappearance, I couldn't miss this out. Take a listen and try to understand what's going on.
911 emergency.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. It's like we're just pushing some guys over. Right here going towards Abilene on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here. Got taken to the woods. Please hurry.
Okay, now run that by me.
I'm not talking to him. I actually ran into him.
Ah, you ran into him. Okay.
That's the first guy.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yeah, no, I need the cops.
Okay. Is anybody hurt? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Shortly after this call at 10 past 1, Brandon's brother made it to his vehicle, but there were no signs of him and his phone and keys were not in the truck. The police also arrived as they had received a call from a passing truck that a man's car was parked dangerously on the stretch of road, which of course was Brandon's. Not long after Kyle and the police had arrived at Brandon's truck, Kyle had a call from Brandon. Although the signal was very weak, Kyle said Brandon was saying he was in a field and was bleeding. Due to an outstanding warrant that Brandon was going to sort out, Kyle thought that Brandon was hiding in the woodland from the police officer, so did not report the call to the officer there and then. At this point, Kyle and the officer had no idea about Brandon's 911 call, otherwise Kyle said he would have told the officer and questioned Brandon about what was going on. After this call, Brandon was never heard of again. We know that Brandon's phone was on until 3:30 in the morning because his brother kept calling it in hopes he would answer. We also know that there was a ping from his phone at 19 minutes past 1 that was located 4 miles away from his truck. What Brandon was doing 4 miles away in such a short amount of time adds to the mystery. His brother and father believe that he stumbled across people as they think there is a second voice in the 911 call. This has led to the theories that Brandon was in the wrong place at the wrong time and saw something he shouldn't have, like a drug deal, and was chased into the woodland. Others say maybe he was attacked by an animal, but 3,000 acres of land was searched and absolutely no evidence was found. The theory that Brandon ran away and is living somewhere else has also been brought up, but all of his family say he would never do this and that they can tell he is in distress from the emergency call. Speaking of which, his family agree that the call has been edited and that only a short sample was released so they could identify his voice. Brandon's disappearance is definitely one of the strangest I have read about, and it's terrifying to think that he was running from someone or something in the pitch black through the dense woodland. I just hope the mystery will one day be solved for Brandon's family. So that's 5 unexplained disappearances with the bodies or any hard evidence still hasn't been found. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for another video.